So one of the biggest things that you need to do, and this is the problem, John, if you are wanting to buy your first home or an investment property, you could put an offer in on something. You might get rejected for the offer, but you may have to spend some money on doing some due diligence before, and it could just be a big waste of money. So one of the things is when you find a conveyancer or solicitor in your area, or I'd imagine it should be state-based, make sure or just ask the question, hey, what's the cost for your conveyancing fees? And they could be like, it's $1,500. We'll look through up to 4 properties. Because they know that you put an offer in on something, you'll want the lawyer or conveyancer to read through it to give you any red flags. Then your offer then gets declined, or it's, there's a big red flag here, so don't go ahead with this. We don't want to spend $1,500 a pop, but there are conveyancers that will allow, a handful of purchases.
Yeah, you might be able to look over a few contracts as long as you then end up proceeding with one. Otherwise, you will get charged regardless. But yeah, I think the key is, like any due diligence of dealing with the right professionals, they need to have experience in this space, because it's very different to reading over a Torrens title contract, for example, and extend that to insurances. A lot of, or not a lot, but some insurance companies don't cover or specialise in strata, so you need to cover off on that.
So one of the, if not the most major thing that you need to do if you're buying a property in a strata plan, you need to look at the minutes of the AGM. So how that would go is you would ask the real estate agent, hey, can you please provide the last 5 years or as much as possible strata report? So they would go to the strata report company, and they would basically have a big fat PDF. These are all the minutes of every meeting, every AGM over the last insert time here. And those minutes, and this is where I want you to pay attention, those minutes will, number one, it could cost a couple $100. Could be a fee involved.
Yeah.
Then what you need to do, you need to go through those minutes with a fine-tooth comb, or even just put it through ChatGPT. I put a 400-page strata document in chat the other day and said, can you have a look at this? What are the red flags? And it was amazing. So AI, while it's crap to say, calculate this financial projection and all this, and it hasn't picked up that the tax rates are wrong or the things have changed, with extracting information out of documents, it's fantastic. So get the strata report, upload it to ChatGPT, and ask for a TLDR strata report, and tell them and it will say what the unit number is, but just be clear with it and say, unit, I want to buy, lot 36, or which could it could be unit 5. Lot 36 could be unit 5. So just be clear on that and say, I want to buy this, and then ask it, what are the projected, for the first 5 years of being there based on this annual report, what am I up for in terms of fees? And it will just tell you.
Yeah.
Ask it, are there any red flags? Are there any special levies? And so you do that in concert with reading through the minutes yourself to see. But one of the big things that you're looking at, I'm doing all the talking as the property guy, aren't I?
You're doing well.
One of the big things to look at, John, is there meat in the sinking funds?
Yeah, and just being on the ground, especially if you're living in it, you've got to ideally get a chance to chat to some of the owners within the complex. Like it's like talking to a local hairdresser about a town, isn't it? So you can pick up so much general information that the minutes may not even account for.
Yeah.
So it's just all part of that due diligence is looking at the minutes, looking at the sinking fund, looking over the contract fine-tooth comb, but then doing the numbers and say, well, okay, age of the building and pest report, what does it all look like for me to make an informed decision? What can I forecast for?
What you would do as well, looking through that, you'd want to know, are there any units in arrears Is there any litigation? Are insurances up to date? These are all just questions that you can ask ChatGPT. One other thing you need to do as well, so we are recording, July that we're recording this. If you requested a report and it said, July, and they give you the report, it was $300 or whatever it is, and you see that, the next AGM is August the 1st, or today, but it's not in there, we're pressing pause and waiting until that AGM and then getting a copy of the minutes. I've seen that in 2 of the units that I was helping do some DD on with my friend. We had to go back and request the AGM minutes because it wasn't in the bundle or it was happening the next week or whatnot.
Yeah.
So you just have to check that. But one of the biggest things that stood out was the amount of units that were maybe 15, 20 years old, which maybe you would say would be newish compared to a 70s or 80s build, that the that the sinking fund was in deficit, literally negative, because no one was contributing.
No.
A whole heap of investors had bought all these units, never paid their levies.
Yeah.
There was litigation to people that had outstanding money because if you don't pay, you'll get a late fee. If you don't pay, there'll be interest accruing, all this stuff. There was one committee that there was litigation against the committee for not doing DD or not running the scheme, like some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah. So your conveyancer would pick up all of that generally.
You'd hope so, but because you can request the report yourself and run it through chat.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. If it was a good deal, and we'll just say it was $600,000, for example, and it was, I just wanted a 1 bed, a 1 bath, and it was fine. Knowing that there is a special levy that is $5,000 or $10,000 a year for the whole complex over the next 5 years, so $50,000, you can just ask ChatGPT, what is my best, most likely, and worst case exposure financially to this levy? And if you know that, well, sure, if there is a $60,000 special levy, I might only be on the hook for $3,000 or something like that. That's not scary because you understand and you can just factor that in because it's a good location, it's newish, it's fine. The rest of the building isn't in deficit. But the red flags are, and the area that we were looking at was around Epping. I shared one a few months ago on the podcast where, $300,000 paint job or something like that, and there was no money. And another one, there was not one owner-occupier in the building, which isn't bad because people have to rent. But the bad thing was all these investors bought all the units. 15 years later, they were selling for less than what the investors paid for them. And the investors are just trying to offload these, but they still owe money to the strata committee, like total mess.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole string of events there that lead you to making these good decisions, and the owner-occupier versus investor ratio is really important from a wealth creation point of view as well, because as you mentioned, the investor doesn't put time into money into the complex like the owner-occupier does. So they'll keep the cosmetic improvements up, whereas the investor will be bare minimum sort of thing. But I think the one, there's plenty of red flags to look out for. But if you're looking at it from a how can I live in this comfortably? Another one that you need to look at is who was the builder and who's the developer. If it was in the last
5.
Well, probably 10 to 15, to be honest. If they're not still around, we can go and that's maybe a concern for a start. But also go and check out what other products they've built that's older than the ones I'm about to buy, and just see, do they look dated? Have they had any problems? Again, try and talk to people, etc. And you get a pretty good feel for what you're dealing with. And there's when it comes to developers and builders, there's the good end and the bad end. And you don't want to be struck on the bad end because the problems just keep mounting up.
Yeah, so for my friend who's like literally looked, I think we've put 4 strata reports through and all of them were rubbish in terms of these strata schemes in the Ryde area.
Yeah. And you also look at the vacancies in those areas and
Yeah.
concrete jungle concerns.
So my friend, she has resolved that it probably will be an older unit, even dare I say red brick type, 80s build or whatever that was, maybe older, smaller, and there has been some promising signs in terms of the financials of the strata committee with an older unit, and she will recarpet it and redo the kitchen and get on with her life.
Because it's simple.
Yeah,
it's
and
basic. There's lots.
3-story, no lifts.
Yeah. Small numbers in the complex, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
But older and uglier. I think older and uglier with units, more often than not, better than new and glossy.
Yeah. Because you don't get, warranty per se.
No.
With your new unit. Like there could be some defect periods and all that. I'm probably not in this climate buying off the plan to live.
It's a lot more questionable than it was maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think the uncertainty of it, there's no better time, and these are actually coming out of my mouth, Glenn, there's no better time to buy units than in the last 10 years than now.
Right. Why?
Because of that supply demand.
Right.
And the fact that affordability for buying houses in chosen areas is an issue, right? The Ellas of the world are saying, I want to live in Brizzy, I want to live in a good suburb, but for me to buy a house, it's going to cost me 1.4.
Yeah.
I've got 700, I can buy a 2-bedroom unit. I'm in every day of the week in that particular suburb.
Is it so? If there was a strata plan and there was a 5-story unit complex in West End or something like that, is there a report you can do for the building to see if there is owner occupiers or investors only?
Yeah. So when you look on CoreLogic, you basically see how many's in the complex,
Right.
and you can see the ownership. So
Right.
it's either saying owner occupied or tenanted or government housing or whatever it might be. So you can check that. And you can just manually do the numbers. Say, righto, there's looks like there's 70% here based on the numbers that I've done, right? But we're looking at, like I was having a conversation with someone in Sydney who's looking in Maroubra, right? There's the difference between the house median price and the unit median price. How much do you reckon?
Oh, it'd be $1 million, wouldn't it?
1.9 million.
Jeez.
So I can never afford to buy a house in Maroubra, but I've got half a chance of buying a unit. Same thing in Miranda near Cronulla. $1 million difference between a unit and a house. So that gap is going to narrow.
But you're not saying it's a good time to buy a unit as an investor, but more if you want to buy it to live in.
Well, there's an argument for as an investor as well, because that gap is going to narrow. It has to. But when you see a house and median house price and median unit price only $200K difference, then you try and buy that house. But yeah.
I mean, there's a lot here, but all I'm saying to the Ellas out there, you've got to kiss a lot of frogs, and you will look at a lot of different units. Try not to get unit fever. If it doesn't feel right, if you've got to force it, don't try and justify, oh, well, there's a special levy, I think I can pay. Like, if it doesn't, like, there's units everywhere, but be very, very strategic with, I want to, as a minimum, 2-bed, 1-bath, or 1-bed, 1-bath, whatever that is. For me personally, studio apartments, not ever buying one to live in or as an investor. Just not doing it.
Well, lending becomes an issue.
Why is that?
Essentially, banks don't like too much under 50 square internal size. So if we've got that, we're buying something that's 45 square because we want to be in the blue chip suburb, you can get lending, but you might pay a premium for it, or you might have to put in 30% deposit or more.
Yeah.
So just be wary of that.
And then I guess the only other kind of bank risk is if there was some suburbs like Mascot in Sydney where some banks and lenders won't lend to a tower because they've already got too much exposure, too many of existing customers.
Yeah, and go further again on that and say, well, they might not lend to a postcode.
Yes.
Because they're already exposed overall in that particular
But your mortgage
postcode.
broker will guide you through that. Reach out to Sphere Home Loans if you need to. Look, there's a lot of doom and gloom, but it's not bad to own in a strata complex. I do. You do. Well,
You've just...
by definition, you do with
by definition,
our other
I do. Yeah, I'm
place.
just thinking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're right. Like, there's probably just that next layer of due diligence that needs to be done that probably doesn't need to be done as strictly with the house, right? There's still obviously red flags with houses as well. But yeah, absolutely not the end of the world to go and buy strata. Absolutely not. And I think there's massive upside in the next 5 years. But just know that you're asking the right questions and ticking the boxes that we've spoken about today.
And, you know, if you go to an open in a unit in Brisbane and there's 15 parties there looking and there's a 20 grand special levy that's levied and your exposure could be, or we'll go more extreme. There's a hole in the sinking fund or there's a special levy and it's black and white all day long that you've got exposure here to maybe 20% or more.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, $20,000 or more you're going to be on the hook for. Sure, if there's 15 people there, you might have to suck it up. But there's one person and their cat that's walking through and it's a bit quiet. Off the bat, that 20K, if they want to sell this bastard or they know that there's an issue here, I want to pay less, knowing that I might have exposure up to $20,000.
Yeah.
And then I'll do a deal.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The probably the final piece on that for me would be glossy is not always better. So when you're looking at new, you walk in, you can smell the carpet, you can, in a nice way, you can see everything's done, move in straight away. Beautiful, nothing to be done. No ugly red carpet from the 80s. You are paying more of a premium for that because the condition that it's in doesn't always mean that it's going to be a better outcome from you from a financial wealth point of view. So just have two sides of the coin when you're going in.
Hey, it's Glen here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.